Ethan had been in space for months. His mission was supposed to be simple: go to an unknown planet, rescue a stranded crew member, and return home. But now, everything was different. The dense alien jungle surrounded him, its strange sounds echoing in the air. Ethan's eyes scanned the trees, but all he could hear were his own breaths and the occasional rustling of leaves. The mission had gone wrong from the start. He had barely landed before his ship was hit by a powerful blast, forcing him to abandon. After hours of navigating the thick jungle, he had found the crew member he came for, Serena, but she was badly injured. Now, both of them were trapped. Ethan had no choice but to carry her deeper into the jungle, hoping to find a way out. He had been holding her for hours, his muscles aching, but there was no other option. Suddenly, the ground beneath him rumbled, and he stopped. He heard movement from every direction. In an instant, he dropped to the ground, pulling Serena close. His training kicked in. His hand reached for the blaster at his side, but before he could draw it, the jungle seemed to close in on him. Dozens of figures emerged from the trees. They were fast for humans. These were no ordinary aliens. They were taller than him, with sleek armor, sharp features, and glowing eyes. Hunters, he realized. The creatures that roamed this planet, known for their deadly skill in capturing prey. The leader of the group stepped forward. She was different from the others. Her armor was more refined, her posture more confident. She was taller, leaner, and her presence commanded attention. She locked eyes with Ethan, and for a moment neither of them moved. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice steady despite the situation. The leader tilted her head, as if studying him. Then she spoke, her voice smooth and cold. "You are human, the ones who are trespassing." Ethan took a step back, trying to buy time. "I didn't come here to fight. I'm just trying to save my crew member." He nodded toward Serena, who was unconscious in his arms. "Silence," the leader said sharply. "You are not welcome here. The law of the jungle is clear: the weaker prey." Before he could respond, two of the hunters moved toward him, grabbing his arms and forcing him to the ground. He struggled, but knew he couldn't break free from their grip. They were too strong. The leader's eyes glowed brighter as she stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "I could end your life now, human," she said, her sword gleaming in the light of the distant suns. "But you will be far more interesting alive." Raced, he was out of options, and his mind quickly searched for a way to escape. But then something strange happened. The leader raised her sword, ready to strike. Ethan, with nothing to lose, took a deep breath and spoke. "Last words," she asked, the blade now dangerously close to his neck. Ethan's lips curled into a small smirk, even as his heart pounded. "Yeah, your grip is weak." The words hung in the air for a moment. The leader, Nisa, blinked, and for the first time since their encounter, something shifted in her eyes. Her sword faltered, just slightly, as if the human's words had actually surprised her. Her hand tightened around the hilt of the sword, but there was a hesitation there now. It was barely noticeable, but it was there. The hunters around her seemed confused as well, not understanding why their leader hadn't finished him off yet. Ethan didn't move, eyes still locked on Nisa's. He could feel the tension in the air, a crackling energy that made his skin prickle. He wasn't sure if he was dead or alive, but one thing was clear: he wasn't going to beg for his life. He wouldn't show fear. Nisa took a step back, lowering the sword, and studied him with renewed interest. "You are different," she murmured, almost to herself. "Humans usually break in front of me." Ethan didn't respond. He only nodded toward Serena, still unconscious in his arms. "I'm not asking for mercy. I just want to get her out of here." Nisa's eyes flicked to Serena, and then back to Ethan. There was something in her gaze, now curiosity mixed with something else. A challenge, maybe. Something that made her look at him as more than just prey. "You think you can escape?" she asked, her voice still cold, but there was an edge of something else there now. "I'm not running," Ethan said. "Just not going down without a fight." Nissa stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke to her warriors in their language, and they stepped back, giving Ethan a little space. He slowly stood, still holding Serena. and he was surprised when Nisa didn't immediately stop him. "Why?" Ethan asked, still wary. "Why haven't you killed me?" Nisa looked him over, the sharpness in her eyes returning. "You're right, I should kill you. I want to see how far you'll go. You're not like the others I've faced." Ethan didn't answer. His mind was racing. If he could survive long enough, maybe he'd find a way to escape. But he needed a plan. He needed time. "Bring him," Nissa ordered. "The others want to see if he lives up to his words." Ethan was led through the jungle, his mind spinning. The odds of survival seemed slim, but for the first time since his capture, he felt something. Like hope. Maybe he had a chance after all. Nissa was different, and he couldn't ignore that spark of curiosity in her eyes. But he also knew that he couldn't trust her not yet. As they moved deeper into the jungle, Ethan realized one thing. He had no choice but to survive. And he would do whatever it took to keep fighting, even if it meant earning the respect of an alien huntress who wanted to see him die. Ethan had no idea where Nisa was leading him. She moved swiftly through the dense jungle, her hunters following closely behind. The trees here were enormous, their thick leaves blocking most of the light, making the world feel dim and quiet. Ethan, still holding Serena in his arms, struggled to keep up with their pace. His legs ached from the long journey, but he forced himself to keep moving. Every few steps, one of Nisa's warriors would glance back, eyeing him with suspicion. Ethan didn't care. Knew they were keeping him alive for a reason, but he didn't know why yet. Nisa was quiet, her expression unreadable. She hadn't spoken since her strange reaction to his words. Ethan was sure she was still thinking about what he had said. Your grip is weak. It had worked. It had gotten him a chance to survive. As they moved deeper into the jungle, the air grew heavier. The sounds of wildlife echoed in the distance. But they didn't stop. There was a tension in the air, something dangerous. Ethan could feel it. Something was coming, and he knew that his survival depended on it. Finally, they arrived at a clearing, a large open area surrounded by tall trees. In the center was a strange structure and arena, it seemed. It was made of stone and metal with tall walls and a high ceiling covered by vines. Ethan couldn't help but stare at it. The place felt alive, as if it had been waiting for something, or someone. Nissa turned to him and spoke in a calm, controlled voice. This is where you will prove yourself. Ethan didn't understand. Prove myself? I thought I was just supposed to die. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. You'd think I would waste time killing someone who has shown such defiance? No. I want to see what you are capable of. Ethan frowned, confused. What do you mean? What do you want me to do? Nissa motioned to the arena behind her. Fight. The words hit Ethan like a punch to the chest. Fight. Already tired, his body was sore, and Serena was still unconscious. But he wasn't about to back down. He knew that if he didn't impress her, he would die. He didn't have much of a choice. Before he could say anything, a loud noise filled the air, and the ground beneath them shook. From the shadows of the trees, something moved. A creature, huge and terrifying, emerged into the clearing. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Its body was covered in thick spiked armor, and its eyes glowed with an eerie yellow light. It was a monster, with sharp claws and massive teeth. Its roar sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Nissa stepped back, her expression still calm. Fight or die. Ethan didn't hesitate. He dropped Serena gently to the ground, hoping she would be safe there, and reached for his blaster. The creature charged at him, its jaws snapping. Ethan fired, but the shot barely scratched its thick hide. It was too powerful, too quick. He ran, dodging the creature's massive claws, his heart racing. He needed a plan. A head-on fight wouldn't work. He had to use his surroundings. He dove behind a large rock, breathing heavily, trying to think. The creature circled, sniffing the air. Ethan could feel it getting closer. Suddenly, he noticed something. The creature's armored body was strong, but its underbelly was unprotected. Ethan grinned. This was his chance. He quickly stood up and sprinted toward the creature, his feet pounding the earth. The creature turned just in time to see him coming. It roared, lunging at him with its jaws wide open. Ethan ducked under the creature's attack, rolling to the side. As it turned, he jumped, aiming for the soft spot beneath its belly. With one powerful kick, he struck the creature hard, sending it tumbling to the ground. The arena was silent. Ethan stood there, chest heaving, staring at the fallen creature. The hunter's warriors, who had been watching from the edge of the clearing, were still. Nissa too stood motionless, her face unreadable. For a moment, Ethan thought he had failed. But then, Nissa's voice broke the silence. "Impressive," she said simply. Ethan, still catching his breath, looked over at her. She was watching him closely, her eyes studying him. There was no smile, no sign of approval, but there was something different in the way she looked at him now. She had seen his skill, his quick thinking, and maybe, just maybe, she respected him for it. "That's not enough," Nissa said after a pause. "You fought a beast, but that was only the first test. Second is coming." Ethan blinked. "Second test? You've got to be kidding me." Nissa's gaze sharpened. "You're not the only one who wants to live. If you want to survive, you will fight again. And this time it will be a fight against something far worse than a beast." Ethan's mind raced. What could be worse than that creature? But he didn't have time to question it. He knew he had to survive. The jungle, the creatures, Nissa's strange game, it was all a test. He had no choice but to play along. He glanced over at Serena, still unconscious on the ground. He hoped she would be okay. But he also knew that he couldn't think about her right now. He had to focus on the fight ahead, as Nissa motioned for him to follow her. Ethan had a feeling that things were about to get a lot harder. The jungle, the hunters, and everything he had faced so far had been nothing compared to what was coming next. And for the first time since he had been captured, Ethan wasn't sure if he was ready, but he had no choice but to face it. He had to survive. Ethan's heart was still pounding in his chest. The creature had been fierce, but he'd managed to take it down. For now, that was enough to prove himself. But Nissa wasn't impressed yet. She had made it clear that this was only the first test, and the next one would be even harder. As he stood in the clearing, watching Nissa and her hunters gather around him, Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't let his guard down. He had to find a way to escape, to survive. If he stayed here much longer, he would only become part of their game, another pawn in their deadly trials. He had to take control. His eyes darted to Serena, still lying unconscious on the ground. He couldn't leave her behind. She was part of his mission, and no matter what happened, he wasn't going to let her die here. Nissa seemed to be watching him carefully. Her cold, sharp eyes studied him, as if she could read his thoughts. She spoke again, her voice low and calm. "You've proven yourself worthy of this second test. Now, you'll face your true challenge." Ethan didn't answer. He was too busy thinking. What was the second test? He had just fought a terrifying creature, and Nissa had said it would be worse. Was she going to throw even more dangerous creatures at him? Or was there something more to this place than just deadly beasts? He knew that if he wanted to survive, he had to outsmart Nissa. He couldn't just fight his way out. No, he needed to plan a way to escape, and he needed to do it without alerting her to what he was about to do. Nissa stepped forward, motioning for him to follow her. "Come with me," she ordered. Ethan hesitated. His mind was still focused on the idea of escape. He glanced around, looking for any possible advantage. The jungle was thick with trees, vines hanging down, but there was no obvious way out. The hunters were always watching, their eyes on him, waiting for him to make a move. He followed Nissa, staying close, but not too close. His body was sore, his muscles aching from the earlier fight, but he kept his pace steady. He knew that every moment he spent with Nissa was a moment to plan. They walked for what felt like an hour, the jungle growing darker as the light began to fade. The sounds of wildlife filled the air, but there was an eerie stillness in the atmosphere. Ethan could feel the weight of Nissa's presence beside him, always watching, always waiting. Finally, they reached another part of the jungle, a hidden grove, thick with trees and vines. In the center, there was a small building made of stone and wood. It was nothing like the arena where he had fought the creature, but it was equally strange. There was something unsettling about the way the building stood, as if it didn't belong in this wild place. Nisa turned to face him. This is where you will rest. Tomorrow, you face your next challenge. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Rest. He didn't need rest. He needed a way out. His mind was still racing, but he couldn't show it. He had to stay calm, to make Nisa think he was just another prisoner, that he was content to play her game. He nodded slowly, pretending to accept his fate. Thank you, he said, his voice steady. I'll be ready for whatever comes next. Nisa studied him for a long moment, her eyes sharp and calculating. Then she gave a small nod. Good. I'll leave you to your rest, but don't get comfortable. The real test is tomorrow. With that, Nisa turned and walked away, disappearing into the jungle with her hunters. Ethan stood there for a moment, his eyes scanning the area. The building was small, but it seemed like a good place to start. If he was going to escape, this was his chance. He carefully made his way toward the building, his footsteps silent on the soft ground. The air was thick with the scent of the jungle, but he ignored it, focusing on his plan. As he reached the door of the building, he noticed that it was old, but sturdy. He tried the handle, but it was locked. It didn't matter. He had dealt with locks before. Pulled a small tool from his belt, a device he had kept hidden since the beginning of the mission. It was a basic lockpick, but it was enough. Within seconds, the door clicked open. Ethan stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. The building was empty, save for some old furniture and supplies. There was a small bed in the corner, but Ethan didn't care about that. He had no intention of staying here. This was just a temporary hiding spot. His eyes scanned the room, looking for anything useful. On a shelf, he found a small bag with what looked like food and water. He grabbed it, tucking it into his pack. Then, he turned his attention to the window. It was small, but just big enough for him to squeeze through. Ethan approached the window, his mind still racing. The jungle outside was dark and he couldn't see much, but he knew this was his chance. If he could slip away now, he might be able to find a way to escape and get back to Serena. He had no idea what Nisa's plans were, but he couldn't trust her. Not yet. With one last glance around the room, Ethan pushed open the window and climbed out. The jungle greeted him with its thick, humid air. He moved quickly, silently, his every step calculated. He wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. He had to stay hidden and stay smart. As he disappeared into the shadows of the jungle, he could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Nisa was a formidable enemy, but he wasn't going to let her win. He had a mission, and he wasn't going to fail. The next challenge might be coming soon, but for now, Ethan had one goal in mind: survival. Ethan moved quickly through the jungle, his heart racing as he pushed through thick underbrush. His mind was set on one goal: survival. After slipping out of the building, he had no idea where Nisa or her hunters had gone. Alive around him, with strange sounds echoing from every direction. The air was heavy, humid, and full of the scent of earth and plants. It made it hard to think straight, but Ethan wasn't about to stop. He had to find a way out of this place, before things got worse. The first test had been hard, but it was nothing compared to what Nisa had said was coming next. There was something about her, something that made Ethan feel uneasy. She wasn't just a ruthless hunter. There was more to her, and he didn't understand it yet. But one thing was clear: he couldn't trust her. After walking for what felt like hours, Ethan stopped to catch his breath. He looked around, trying to get his bearings. The jungle was dense, with towering trees that blocked out most of the sunlight. He didn't know where he was or where he was headed, but he knew he couldn't stop moving. The longer he stayed out here, the more likely he was to run into Nisa and her warriors. He couldn't let that happen. Suddenly he heard something, a rustling sound coming from behind him. Ethan froze, his heart skipping a beat. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the shadows between the trees. For a moment he thought it might be one of Nisa's hunters, but then he saw it. A figure walking through the jungle with purpose. It was Nisa. She wasn't alone. Two other figures stood beside her, one on either side. Ethan's body tensed. He wasn't sure if he should try to run or face them head-on. But as Nisa stepped forward, she raised a hand to stop the others. "Wait," she said softly, her voice cutting through the quiet jungle. Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. He didn't know what Nissa was doing, but he didn't want to get caught. The jungle around him offered a few places to hide, but he knew that if he ran, they would see him. "You don't need to hide," Nissa said, her voice calm. She didn't sound angry or annoyed, just curious. "I know you're there." Ethan stepped out from behind a tree, trying to appear casual, though his pulse was still racing. "What do you want, Nissa?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. Nissa studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You're different from the others," she said. "I've seen many humans try to fight their way out of situations like this. But you," she paused, tilting her head, clearly considering something. "You're not like the others." Ethan didn't know what she meant by that. He had no idea what she was trying to figure out, but he didn't have time to think about it. "What do you want with me?" he asked again. Nissa's expression softened, just for a moment. "I want to understand you," she said quietly. "Humans are unpredictable. You have strength, but not just in the way you fight. You fight with something else, something that's not in your body. It's in your mind." Ethan frowned, unsure of what she was saying. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "I'm just trying to survive." Nissa stepped closer, her eyes never leaving him. "I know, but there's more to you than that. It's more than just survival." Before Ethan could reply, one of the hunters behind her spoke up, his voice rough. "You should finish this, Nissa. He's only a human." "What's the point of all this?" Nissa held up a hand to silence him, and the hunter fell quiet. "No," she said firmly. "There's more at play here than you understand." Ethan watched her carefully, trying to make sense of her words. Was she trying to trick him? Was this part of some twisted test? Couldn't tell. But he knew that whatever game Nissa was playing, he couldn't afford to trust her. Not yet. "Why? Are you helping me?" he asked, his voice low. "You're a hunter. You could have killed me easily. Why didn't you?" Nissa's eyes narrowed, and she glanced toward the other hunters. They stood silently, watching the exchange. Then, after a moment, Nissa spoke again. "Because not all of my people agree with the way things are," she said quietly. "I was born into a group of hunters. It is all we've ever known. But the more I've seen of humans, the more I've begun to question everything." Ethan's mind was racing. This was not what he had expected. He had thought Nissa was just another ruthless killer, but now she was telling him something completely different. "You're different," she repeated. "You don't fight like the others. You don't beg for mercy. And you don't fear death. You face it head on, but you don't let it control you. That's why I didn't kill you." Ethan wasn't sure how to respond. The more Nissa spoke, the more confused he became. There was something about her that was different from the others, but he couldn't figure out what it was. He had to be careful. Nissa took a step back and looked at the other hunters. "You stay here," she said. "I want to speak to him." Alone, the hunters exchanged looks but didn't argue. They stepped back, giving Nissa and Ethan some space. Ethan wasn't sure if he should be grateful for the break or worried about what Nissa might do next. "I've been given a choice," Nissa said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "My people want to destroy humanity. They see you as nothing more than prey. But I've seen things. I've seen how strong you are, how you fight for what you believe in, and I don't want to see you destroyed." Ethan stared at her, shocked by her words. "What are you saying?" Met his gaze. "I'm offering you a choice. You can continue to fight, but this time, you won't be alone. I will help you." Ethan stared at Nissa, the words she had just spoken echoing in his mind. "You'll help me?" he asked, his voice filled with confusion. He had always seen Nissa as an enemy, someone to fight against. But now she was offering him a chance. To escape? To survive? Was this a trick? Or was she serious? Nissa stood in front of him, her eyes steady and intense. "Yes," she said. "I've seen enough. I've seen your strength, your will to survive. But more than that, I've seen the truth. Humans are not the monsters my people think you are." He then didn't know what to think. Her offer was unexpected. But it didn't change the fact that he was still a prisoner. He wasn't sure if he could trust her, but he knew that for now he didn't have many choices. "You're sure about this?" Ethan asked, trying to read her expression. "People will never forgive you if you help me. Nisa gave a small, grim smile. I'm willing to take that risk. The way things are, it's not right. I've seen too many lives lost, too many senseless deaths. It's time for a change. Ethan wasn't sure what to make of her words. She spoke with conviction, but he still had doubts. How could someone like her, one of the fiercest hunters on the planet, suddenly turn against her people? But there was something in her eyes that made him believe she wasn't lying. Maybe this wasn't just about survival for her. Maybe it was about something deeper. He didn't have much time to think about it. Before he could respond, they heard a noise from the jungle. The sound of footsteps. Ethan's heart raced as Nissa's eyes flicked toward the trees. There. Coming, she said, her voice low. We don't have much time. Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. He had known this moment would come, but he wasn't ready for it. He had to get out, and quickly. Who's coming? He asked, his voice sharp. The others, Nisa said, her face serious. My people. They've been searching for you since you escaped. Ethan glanced at the hunters standing off to the side. They had been quiet, watching from the shadows, but now they stepped forward, their eyes locked on him. One of them, a tall male with a scar running down his face, stepped forward. Nissa, he said, his voice filled with anger. What are you doing? This human is a threat to our people. He must be captured and brought back. Nissa didn't flinch, but Ethan could see the tension in her posture. She was standing her ground, but he knew that her people wouldn't just let her walk away. They would force her to choose side with them or side with him. I'm not taking him back, Nisa said firmly. He's not the enemy. We're the ones who need to change. The hunter with the scar stepped closer, his voice growing colder. You're betraying us, Nisa. You've chosen a human over your own people. You know the consequences of that. Ethan's eyes flicked between Nisa and the approaching hunters. He could see the anger in their eyes, the way they looked at him as if he were already dead. He knew he had to act fast. Before he could make a move, Nisa spoke again, her voice calm but full of authority. I've made my choice. You can try to stop me, but I will fight for what I believe is right. Scarred Hunter's eyes narrowed. You've chosen a dangerous path. You betrayed your own kind. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. This was it. Nissa had made her choice, but it wasn't going to be easy. He could see the way the other hunters were looking at her, the distrust and anger in their eyes. They weren't going to let her go without a fight. I'm not going to fight you, Nisa said, her voice steady. But if you want to stop me, you'll have to kill me. The tension in the air was thick, and Ethan could feel the weight of the situation. He knew things were about to get out of hand. If the hunters didn't back down, there would be bloodshed. And he didn't want that. He didn't want to see Nissa get hurt, especially after everything she had done for him. Please, Ethan said, his voice pleading. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. You don't have to fight for them. But the scarred hunter only shook his head. It's too late for that, he said. You've already made your choice, Nisa. Now we make ours. In an instant, the hunters drew their weapons, their blades gleaming in the dim light of the jungle. The air crackled with tension, and Ethan could feel the danger in the air. He had no idea how he was going to get out of this. There were too many of them, and he was outnumbered. Nisa stepped in front of Ethan, her sword drawn and ready. I won't let you hurt him, she said, her voice low and determined. The scarred hunter hesitated for a moment, then took a step forward. Then you leave me no choice. Before Ethan could react, the battle began. Nissa moved swiftly, her sword flashing as she clashed with the first of the hunters. Ethan didn't know what to do. He wanted to help. But he didn't have the weapons or skills to fight off trained hunters like these. As Nissa fought, Ethan watched her with a mix of awe and fear. She was skilled, graceful even, as she blocked and countered every attack. There were too many of them. He could see the way her movements were slowing, her energy draining with each passing moment. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He had to do something. Couldn't let Nissa fight alone. With a burst of adrenaline, Ethan grabbed a nearby rock and hurled it toward one of the hunters. The hunter turned just in time to see the rock coming, but it hit him square in the face. Knocking him off balance, it was enough to give Nissa the opening she needed. With a swift movement, she disarmed the hunter and knocked him to the ground. But more hunters were coming. Nissa was running out of time, and so was Ethan. He needed to make a choice: stay and fight, or run and survive. The sound of clashing metal echoed through the jungle. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he watched Nissa fight. Her movements were fast and sharp, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She was pushing herself to the limit, trying to protect him, but there were too many of them. She couldn't keep this up forever. Ethan knew he couldn't just stand there and watch. He had to do something. But what? He wasn't a fighter like Nissa. He wasn't trained in combat. But he couldn't just let her fight alone, not after everything she had done for him. He grabbed a branch from the ground, his hand shaking as he gripped it. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. He had to make a choice: stay and fight, or run and leave Nissa behind. Couldn't leave her. She had given him a chance to survive. Now it was his turn to help her. With a deep breath, he charged forward, his feet pounding against the soft ground. The scarred hunter was the closest. His back turned as he faced Nissa. Ethan swung the branch, hitting the hunter hard in the back. The hunter let out a grunt of surprise and turned, his eyes widening when he saw Ethan. "You?" the hunter snarled. Ethan swung again, this time aiming for the hunter's legs. The branch made contact, and the hunter stumbled, losing his balance. He fell to the ground with a heavy thud. For a moment, Ethan thought he had done it. He had helped. But then the hunter quickly recovered, his eyes filled with fury. Before Ethan could react, the hunter lunged at him. The impact knocked him to the ground, the branch slipping from his hands. Ethan gasped for breath as the hunter grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. Panic surged through him as he struggled to break free. The hunter's grip tightened, and for a moment, Ethan thought this might be the end. But then Nissa's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Let him go." The hunter hesitated for a split second, just long enough for Nissa to strike. She moved fast, her sword flashing in the dim light of the jungle. With one swift motion, she sliced through the hunter's weapon and knocked him back. Ethan gasped, his body still weak from the struggle. But he managed to get his feet underneath him. Nissa stepped in front of him, her face determined. She was breathing heavily, but she wasn't backing down. She raised her sword, pointing it directly at the remaining hunters. "This is your last warning," she said, her voice cold. "Leave now, or I will make you leave." The remaining hunters exchanged uncertain looks, their eyes flicking between Nissa and the fallen hunter. Ethan could see the hesitation in their movements. They hadn't expected Nissa to fight back like this. They hadn't expected her to turn on them. The scarred hunter, still recovering from the blow to his legs, glared at Nissa. "You've made a mistake, Nissa," he growled. "You'll never be allowed to walk away from this." Nissa's gaze never wavered. "I'm not walking away," she said, her voice steady. "I'm staying right here with Ethan, and if you want to stop me, you'll have to go through me." For a long moment, no one moved. The jungle seemed to hold its breath, the tension hanging thick in the air. Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of hope rise within him. Maybe Nissa was right. Maybe this was the beginning of something different. Finally, the scarred hunter nodded to the others and they backed away slowly. Their weapons still raised, but their movements less certain. They weren't ready to give up. But they weren't willing to fight Nissa and her newfound ally. With a final angry glance, the hunters turned and retreated into the jungle, peering into the trees. The battle was over for now. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He looked at Nissa, who was still standing tall. Her sword lowered, but her eyes still watchful. "Thank you," he said, his voice hoarse. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stepped in." Nissa nodded, though her expression was unreadable. "It wasn't about saving you," she said quietly. "It was about choosing what's right." Ethan frowned, confused. "Choosing what's right?" Nissa turned to face him fully, her gaze softening. "I've seen too many things in my life. Too many lives taken for no reason. I've been part of something that I thought was right. But now I see that maybe we've been wrong all along." Ethan was silent for a moment, thinking about her words. He could see the pain in her eyes, the weight of the decision she had made. She had chosen him, chosen to fight for him, even though it meant turning her back on everything she had known. I don't know what's coming next. But whatever happens, I'm with you now. We're in this together. Ethan's heart swelled with gratitude. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't alone anymore. Nissa had made her choice, and now they would face whatever came next as a team. Together, they would fight to survive. Together, they would change the future.